Hi everybody, we're back again, and this time it's the second portion of our painting in the beginner's process of learning how to paint the Smarties packet. We are working right now through more of the color wheel and the different washes, and we'll continue on until we get to the end process. Come and join me. We've kind of been doing that all along. I'm just going to take and wet another brush here, and I'll show you again. If we want to achieve that beautiful red, it's the yellow and the permanent rose. So the idea being that if I was to put, I could put permanent rose on a wash, just like that. Okay. And then if I put my yellow next to it, and then if I brought it and I actually went over top of it, if you notice what happens, it starts to do the change. Now, but I can also do it by just mixing the two colors together. So here was my permanent rose, right? And now I'm mixing it with the yellow, and I've almost got enough to get that beautiful red that you see. It's just hidden in there. So there's my red that I was making with those two colors there. Okay. And now I could also, you'll see, I could leave it wet on wet, would be, I could take that same red, I'll apply it down here. Okay, so there's my red. And let's take another color that we happen to have. We'll mix a green. So let's get the green here again. Okay. And we're now going to put that wet on wet, because this is still wet. We're going to apply that over top. We're going to see what happens. Now, depending on the type of color you're using, one color will tend to do some interesting things over the other color. And it looks like we're kind of getting a bit of a muddy, maybe brownish color. It just so happens the red and green are complements, and they should neutralize each other. So we'll see what happens in a little bit of time. Okay, so let's start playing with our actual Smarties. First, let's think about some of the things we just made up. We have a pink, we have a dark blue, we have a yellow. What we don't have is that brown, but I think if I show you, we can make that brown. We have our orange, and we have a few things. So let's try a couple of just Smarties that we see on the package, because we see a little bit of shadow, so it looks like that Smartie is actually three-dimensional. Okay, that's one. Let's try another one here. That's another one. And it's just a little bit of an oval, and if you notice that the oval is it's not a perfect circle here, but it also is a little narrow on one end, a little wider on the other. And what I noticed too is they've got a bit more shadow on one part and a little bit of a kind of a white left. And then the three here that they have, which says make em last. Let's try just a straight on view like that here with the three colors. Trying to even out my circle. Now you know how you could help yourself with just using a coin of some sort or any other kind of display that you have. And let's do one more like this. I'll do the fuchsia, and then we'll figure out how to get our brown. Okay, while that's drying there, I just put the box in the center. So let me find my clean water and my tray of mixing, and let's start. So the first one that let's try is the yellow. So I'm going to bring some yellow here. And the yellow is fairly straightforward, cool yellow. It's got a tinge of green on mine. Okay, so let's do the whole thing. Oh, and I see a little bit of yellow, like light. So let's push it over a bit. So some of that white stays in that area. Push it around a bit. Okay. If I need to, like I mentioned, I can lift it off a bit. Alright. So in order to make the shadow, we're going to use a little bit of that orange. That next color over the warmer. And just add a little bit of that in for the shadow. So that was wet on wet. And we've got to be careful because it can spread around quite a bit. And then it got lighter on the edge here. And we could even go in a little bit later once it's a little bit dry. I'm just going to lift this a bit because I find that too dark. We'll let that, we'll probably put a little bit more just in there. Just bring that down there. Okay, now let's try the green. Since we have the green here and I have the yellow, let's try and mix it so it's just a little brighter green right there. So here again we go with the green. I'm going to leave a little bit of white around there. You could mask that. There's masking fluid here. I'm going to show you different kinds of masking fluid that you could use, and I will show you when we actually do the Smarties part because it's white. So we're going to leave a little bit of white around there, and then we just need to add just a wee bit of dark. Now the pencil actually brought in quite a bit of dark, or we could just come back in and darken it with the color that we have there. And that needs just a little darker right along the edge. There's a little bit of dark over here. And even a little hint of darker there. Okay. And then we said we were going to do the kind of the permanent rose, which is more, that's more fuchsia, that's the red, and there's even an orange in there. Okay, so here we're going to do, here's my permanent rose, and we're going to put that down there, and there's this white edge just around that corner there. So we're just going to leave that and come around the edge down here. And we're going to push that around a bit because it's a bit darker over here. And I think we're just going to touch that up so it looks a little more. And now I just kind of either have to wait or I just have to put a little darker right in there. And right around there. Oops. Smudge that. Now I could also, because that seems very, very white, if I dry my brush, clean it up, I can just pull a little bit more light color in there. Do the same over here. Whoops, that's a bit too much. Let's try and soften it up and pull it out again. Okay. So those are our 3 Smarties there. Now we're going to do the 3 Smarties that are here. Now if you notice, the blue is very light phthalo blue. The yellow is starting with the lemon yellow and then moving it over. As you can see, the same similar color here. And then our red is definitely our red there. Okay, let's start with the red because I happen to have it already mixed up here. And I just need another cloth to make sure I've got clean brush here. Okay, so here's my red, and we're going to start with just laying a nice light color down. Now you see there's a little bit of white there. I'm trying to leave it, but I'm also trying to make it not perfect white. So I'm going to come back in over here, and we're probably going to have to do another layer in order to get it to be the right color that we want in some of the areas. Now we can try and do it right on wet, or we can wait and do a glazing afterwards. And with the glazing, it just makes it so it's not running around as much. Okay, push some of that over there. So why don't we wait till that dries? Try and make sure that it's round enough here. Okay? So while we're waiting for that to dry, we'll take more water here. And we will get some more yellow. And we'll start by doing the yellow all around, just pushing it back so there's a bit of whiteness there. And we'll leave that to make another layer too. And now let's do the phthalo blue. We got to really clean our brush for the phthalo blue. Might even be better to do a different brush, and I happen to have the other one sitting in the water, so let's make sure it's clean. It's still got a bit of green on it. And let's try and do a little bit of blue. Keep it as light as possible and just use the water. Remember, this stains really quite a bit. Okay, so we're just going to let that dry for a minute. And now let me show you how to mix a bit of brown. Now you see over here that we actually have that mixture of green and red, and what it did was it actually took the green to a much more darker green, and in the corner here is a little bit of brown. So that means we could actually make our brown with just mixing up different colors. So we're going to start first with the yellow to make an orange. I'm going to add some more permanent red to make it a really almost a red, and a warm red. And now we're going to add in some blue. And if we add in a little bit more blue, if we add too much blue, we're going to get to gray. Watch this. There's our gray. So what we need to do, we need to add a little bit more red to it. Oh, now we're going to go purple. So we need a little bit more yellow. And now we've got a brown. And that's the brown we're going to use for our Smarties. So I'm just going to put that down here at the base. And that will be the Smarties area that we need around the Smarties. Okay. And because I've got this right now on my brush, I can tiny bit go in here, just put a little bit there for shadowing. And if I take my other wet brush, is that wet enough? Yep. I can then soften that up just to create that little bit of extra shadow in there. We can do that again here with just, I'll take a little bit of the brown, pop it in here, and it's just going to darken up my color. I can also go back now because it's dry, and I can add a little bit more green to it too. So we've gotten a little bit more shadow in our Smartie there. This Smartie doesn't have quite the shadow it needs in order to make it look like that's a bit too green now. Let's see if I can find another brush. Sometimes it's better to use a really small extra brush. I have so many small brushes and I can't find one that I need right now. So let's try that. Let's go back in to clean water and let's put a little bit more. That's still too green. Do we have any orange around here anywhere that I can make? There we go. There's some orange. Let's pop that in there a bit. To me, that's a bit too dark. Let's look at our Smartie. Yeah, because it didn't quite go up that much. So let's lift that out a bit. We can always redo it. My drawing is probably what's causing it, because you see the bit of Smartie drawing there. Okay, so let's just soften that up and bring it out a little bit more. Okay. Not perfect, but better. Now here, on the other hand, I'm going to warm up my yellow just a bit more here. And here we're going to try, whoop, where we are here, to get more of that darkness to what we want here. Whoop, that may be too dark. Oh, that's not bad. Let's go back into my yellow and let's just layer it a little bit more. Look at that. See how that's getting darker? And I don't know that we could do little. Careful. If we do any more dark, would be just maybe too much. And I'm trying to see if there's any dark on this side. Not really. Okay, so now let's go back in with the blue again. Now the blue, here's my blue. I'm just going to put it over here. If I just put the blue on there, It's not going to be too bad. It's going to be a little bit on the greenish side. So let's add some water and push it around. Remember, I want to leave that little bit of white. Now all I have to do in order to make that a little bit on the more of the dark blue side is add a little bit of red to it. So I'm just going to pull some of that red in there and pop some of that red in. And as long as I don't do too much, and it'll go a little bit more bluish, then it will go purple. Okay, so finally our red, because I made the brown now, I need to go back in and make some better red. There we go. And I'm just going to pop that right in there. Use a little bit more water, push that around a bit. Remember to keep that little bit of white. And if I really need to, if I need to add any more dark, right now I better not, because if I do, it's going to go too dark. I could use a little green, because that's the complementary color, and I would get the little bit of dark that I need in there. Be careful though, because it can go too dark too fast. Okay. And there we go, those are our Smarties. Now, there is a background there too that we need to capture, and that background is kind of a mix between those two. So I think we're good for now. And let's see what we can do here. I'm just going to clean my brushes and trying to see, oh yes, how to do a bit of masking fluid. So let's just try and make that Smartie. S. And let's try the M as well. You may need to practice those a bit too. Okay, so SM just happens to be my initials. So let's try first with a little bit of brown around it. Because if I'm really smart, I can, haha, smart, a little pun there, I can just take the brown and just work it around. And I just have to watch because it's actually following my letters around. And I also know there's a little bit lighter on the upper part. Oh, it's a bit more work than I thought. Okay. Come around here. Now this has quite a tip to it, so it's not a bad, or you should go with a smaller brush to have more control. The tighter you are, the closer you are to your brush, the harder it is sometimes to get those, you know, those special things. So don't feel like you have to keep close to the brush. Allow yourself to get the brush on the stem and just be a little looser and just slowly work it. They even have a little bit around there. Okay, just so you can see how it's going to work. Okay, now, again, they've got almost a caramel around the edge, and to achieve that, we're going to have to add a little bit more yellow to make it look almost like an orange around there. I've just got some yellow in here, and I'm going to add a little bit more red. And add a little bit more yellow and see if I can come up with that caramel. And if I put it just on the edge here, what happens? To me it looks quite dark. And it's still wet, so it may be the wrong time to put it in, because all that brown is coming and actually just pushing out. So it may be necessary to actually do the caramel first and then apply a layer of brown over top in order to make that work. The other thing I was going to show you was how I could actually mask those letters, and we'll do that here in just a minute. And I just noticed my curve of my S is not quite right, so let's just pop that in there a bit more. Okay, so while I'm at this, let's let that dry. I didn't do a very good job of getting my little waves around here. So we may need to actually draw those waves around in order to make that happen. Alright, so not bad for a first try. Since I have it, and since I'm just going to take my brush, I'm not going to actually, there, look at that, just glazing over a little bit more with that brown allows me to get the darkness that I'm looking for. You definitely want darker, and it looks like this is much closer together, so I'll have to watch that when I redraw it. And dry it in here. Okay, but this might just work. I just have to very carefully wait till it dries and then apply a darker layer right around the edge. And all I'd have to do, I could even just take a little bit of phthalo blue and pop in some phthalo blue, because that will darken the color. Not quite as chocolatey as I'd like, so I probably need to use a little bit more permanent rose. Alright, let me show you how we do. Let's try that S again. Kind of goes like this, around there, a little bit bigger here, and there. Okay, and then the M. Okay, and I think that M goes just a little bit more out like that. So again, just taking my little bit of eraser here, we'll fix that. This time, very carefully, I'm actually going to do that second layer. Around like that. So I see where the little bumps go. And then it goes on from there. And then it comes, actually doesn't come in that much, it comes out there. It's a bump there, there, there. Oh, it's actually a little smaller there. And it keeps going from there. Okay, so there's a couple different ways you can do it. The masking fluid that I have here, Fine Line Resist Pen, actually has a little tip, and what you need to do is you just touch it and very carefully squeeze, because it blobs out really fast. Oh, I hope this is working. I think I've gummed it up. No, it's gummed up. What happens is underneath here, it will actually, if you don't put it in right, there's a little metal piece and I don't think it was attached properly. It dried out in here. So I can't show you on this one. So I will close this up and reattach it. Okay. Oh, there was some, that's interesting. Maybe it was just a bubble. Let's try that again. No, it's not working. Just make sure I close it up here. The metal piece has to go inside the other metal in order to make sure it stays. So I'm going to have to show you a different way, and I'm going to show you with Winsor Newton. Now, try not to shake your bottle, because if you do, what happens, the bubbles come out. And so all I want is just enough that I can lay it on. I'm just using an old calligraphy pen here. You can use a brush, but you have to use the brush in a special way, because if you don't, see what happens? It's gumming up already, and the brush will get gummed up too. You have to use soap, and you have to use a more of a acrylic based brush. And I see that even my Winsor Newton, I haven't used it in a while. It's quite already gummy. Wow. And it's not easy to apply. And you have to let this dry, and even have a special eraser. You can use your finger to erase it. It tends to burn your finger because you're rubbing so hard. I'm just trying to push it up to where the edges are. Let's try again. Almost there. Let's add a bit more up here. There we go. Okay, and let's try the M2. I just need to be in more control by putting a little bit more on and then pulling it. So what happens with the masking fluid? I was going to say, I mentioned about the rubber cement eraser, and that you must let this dry completely. It has to be gummy before you can actually paint around it. Otherwise you will get it into your brush and it'll all get mixed up and it won't work at all. Okay, so there is my masking fluid that I've put on. I'm closing my bottle here, and I'm just going to take some tissue and clean my calligraphy brush to make sure it's not... When it looks like I happen to have some ink on my... because I was using some Indian ink on here, and that's probably why you see a little bit of black in there, because I didn't clean the ink off properly. Okay, so I'm going to close that off, and you have to let that dry. Now, since we're waiting for that to dry, what I can show you is with my little brush here, I'm going to take that brown that I have there, add a little bit more blue into it, and to get that rich chocolatey brown here. And I can go back in, let's look at our box, and now I can, if I'm careful, actually paint in the darks. And so there's a little bit of dark just on the inside edge, a little bit more around everything actually, if you watch carefully. So just take your time and carefully take a line of the small brush and just slowly go around. Another trick would be to actually take a sepia pen, and I don't have any of my sepia pens. I've got just the black, and you could actually use the pen to make your dark. I mean, why not make it easier on yourself? If you're having a hard time controlling it, that's what you can use. But make sure your paint is dry, because if you don't, what happens is the ink will not run from the paint from this nib. Now that's a bit dark, but if I go over with the paint again, I could actually get it to make a little bit more of a transition. Now I'm being a little sloppy. Just take your time. And this is a 0, I think. It's falling apart. I believe it's a 0. It's always good to have one little one, because that can help you with some of these tiny, tiny little areas. Okay, so we've been working hard on all these processes. So why don't we take a break and come back for another session to finish our Smartie box. We took a little bit of a break, and now we're back to show you a little bit more how the masking fluid works. I've drawn in my Smarties box to show you. I was trying out some of a fine line for some of the different whites up here, but I'm not sure it's working as well as it should. Oh, there it goes. and I'm just doing scribbles because and dots because there's no way anybody's going to see that. I will do the Nestle's. If I can see it, I have to take my glasses off and go closer. And I'm just looking, oh yeah, there's a little line under here. And a line across the top here. I don't know if it's gonna could all squirt out. It seems I get a little bit and then it comes up again on me. There's some air somewhere in the actual thing. It was working there quite well. Okay, so back to what I was doing with my painting here. I wanted to show you how you can. We were gonna, let's remix here. We were gonna mix this kind of goldeny caramel color, which is almost more of on the, let's see here. Close, let's have a look. Yeah, you know, I think I'll start with that first. And this is how I'll do it. Just go around the edges like this. Don't worry about painting over anything specific because you've masked in, and then once it dries we'll go in and we'll paint over the darker things that we need to paint. Might be helpful if I put my glasses back on though, so that I don't go out of the lines, but I've already gone out of the lines as usual. So just trying to make sure that I've covered the areas I should. I don't want to cover anything in here if I've just accidentally not put my masking fluid quite close enough, so I'll just try and make sure that I've got everything else all painted the way I want it. Okay, so that's pretty much done, although I like some of this color. I'd like to bring it down here a bit. Just a nicer caramel than I've got working in here. Okay, so that's the caramel, and then once the caramel dries I can start putting in the brown. One of the things we should try is to get that blue back. So I'm taking some of my phthalo blue into here, adding some permanent red, rose I should say, permanent rose. Now that's a bit too dark. Yeah, that's it right there, maybe even a little bit more. So it's just not quite so. I just want to show you what I'm hoping for the color around some of the areas here. So basically you would start with some of this blue, and I think what we'll have to do is we'll have to bring in some phthalo first, and it looks like the sign up there is the phthalo. So I've got masking fluid all over my fingers. You should have a little bit of a soapy dishwater soap wash so that you can get rid of the masking if you find that it gets on your fingers. Anyways, so let's go back here and take some clean water again. Take some of my phthalo blue just on its own. See that? That's exactly what I need for some of those spots, but if I use that with the other paint I'm going to lose all that color. So, and up here that would be what I would want for my little banner. That's going to happen up there. So we've managed to mix the brown, we've managed to mix the blue, and we've got the green. I see, I'm not going to bother with some of this writing here. I can try, but I think the most important thing is just to get the feeling for the colors, and we're not going to get into all these extra little details, although that's fun too if you really do want to do that. It's more just to feel comfortable mixing and being able to apply the ideas that we're going to be using for the painting. Now that you see that, is it dry yet? Pretty close. So I'm going to take my very small brush that I said, the 0, and I'm going to go back in here and just add a little bit more blue to it to make it a very dark brown, okay? Now we have that kind of mid-brown, so there's two things I have to do. I have to take some of that yellow, and add a little bit more red to it. See, that's a little too reddish brown. Too reddish brown because it's more caramely, so maybe we need to go back here. No, we just need more yellow. There we go. Okay, so what happens then is basically we have to go through it again. Perfect. Just leaving that little edge, hint of that little yellow edge. And maybe it helped that the masking fluid was that color too, because it made a good reference. Okay, and then when that's dry, then I can take it and make it dark. Okay, so what's going to happen now is I will not talk as I actually do the painting, but I will, before I do the painting, just finish showing you how I would do the masking fluid. If I was going to do it, do I need to do it? Yeah, I better, just so that you can see a little bit more of how it works. What I'm looking for right now is the other, oop, careful. I'm going to use my other brush. I had an acrylic brush here just a moment ago that I was using to, there it is. So I'm going to use, if you can see that, I'm going to use that. Whoa, can't use that.